Before there was Persona, before there was Final Fantasy, before there was Dragon Quest, there was football. American football, not the other football. Gridiron football is both the most American thing ever and also the closest thing to an old school Japanese style role-playing game that's ever existed. The JRPG style is deeply rooted in the classic games one would dust off their old NES to play, with deep turn-based combat, a plethora of party members, and a heavy emphasis on statistics. 2024 marks the return of a beloved franchise from the old school turn-based RPG genre that's been absent for over a decade, and that franchise juggernaut is college football. Still not the other football. College Football 25 is the 22nd college football game ever made, but a prequel to College Football USA 97. Now I know, they give these games some strange names, but hey, what do you expect from these long-running RPG games? At least it's not as confusing as Kingdom Hearts 358 Days Over 2. The hell does NCAA mean? While college football has multiple game modes, the game, not the actual sport, the main story mode here is called Road to Glory, which begins by creating a character, choosing their class, and then picking what college to go to for the RPG adventure of a lifetime. Character stat sheets are extensive and change drastically depending on the class chosen. There are 5 classes to pick from, each with vastly different playstyles. The quarterback class is an attack-heavy leadership role who specializes in projectile attacks with the ball. These long-range attacks unearth massive damage potential, but are also the riskiest with how long they can take to execute. Running backs are much faster and more aggressive attackers than quarterbacks. They grab the ball straight from the quarterback's hands to deliver physical short-range attacks that are more reliable, yet generally weaker than a quarterback's projectiles. Wide receivers serve as the attacking party's support class, assisting the quarterback's projectile attacks with precise positioning. Quarterbacks need wide receivers for their projectile attacks to land, and the wide receiver adds crit damage by running the ball as far down the arena as possible. The middle linebacker is a defensive class physically stronger than any other. They specialize in taking down any enemy who's carrying the ball. Finally, cornerbacks serve as a hard counter against enemy wide receivers. They too rely heavily on positioning, but their main goal is to follow the wide receiver and time out the perfect counterattack whenever the ball gets close. All classes are balanced and viable options within the story mode, but the quarterback's leadership role seems like the right choice for the prototypical RPG protagonist. Every class has multiple subclasses to choose from that alter the starting stats to better align with the player's build. Field general quarterbacks can throw more powerful projectile attacks, while improviser quarterbacks work more like a hybrid class between quarterback and running back that grants them greater agility when gunning for a running attack. It's nice to have this level of customization right at the start, but if you don't already understand how the game works, it may be tough to know what playstyle is best, and even tougher to know what school is the right choice. One of the biggest game changers along the road to glory comes from choosing schools. While the game is generous with college applications, it allows the difficulty to be just as customizable as the plot, because schools don't only dictate the color scheme, they also determine the party members acquired, which changes the narrative possibilities. Joining a more popular football school increases the likelihood of meeting high-level party members, while also increasing the odds of winning the championship at the end of each school year. Yes, what kind of game would this be without a tournament arc? Some kind of Western RPG? Unlike the average JRPG, College Football 25 is light on narrative. But the story is purposefully light so the player can play within these narrative systems to build their own story. Players dedicate 4 years of college improving their stats so they can take home the National College Football Championship trophy and eventually go pro. Going to college at UMass meant I had an uphill battle coming my way if I was ever going to make it to the college football tournament. The story dynamically evolves based on how many battles are won, because unique to this RPG, the plot continues whether you fail or not. My freshman year began with these underdogs barely filling their small stadium. But win after win with UMass sparked a fire in my party that put us on the path towards success. We had a modest winning streak freshman year, the likes of which this town hadn't seen in a long time. Morale grew between the school and the fans as more people showed up to the battlefield cheering us on, yet it still didn't help us get invited to the tournament. Since the road to glory only has 12 battles per school year, losing any battle is a big deal. Every win and every loss is tallied up at the end of the year to be compared to every other college football team out there. Only the schools with the best records get to enter the tournament, while the losers must drown in their sorrows until next year. When we met Georgia, the number 4 team in the entire country, we had another thing coming. This boss battle taught us what real college football was like. Unlike prior schools, Georgia destroyed our hopes, our spirits, and our winning streak. Even with a winning record of 8 wins and 5 losses and winning the Pop-Tart Bowl, we still couldn't break into the top 25. And they didn't even give us Pop-Tarts. I've never played an RPG before where every single battle had stakes as high as this. College football took note of our modestly successful season and congratulated us sophomore year with a tougher lineup of schools to tackle. The party wasn't afraid. We learned from our mistakes last year and were ready to enter this season with heads held high. My story was far from over, but so far, this review probably has more storytelling going on than the entire game. Dialogue is almost non-existent, instead relying on narrators to enthusiastically commentate over the battles at large. It's impressive for an RPG to have characters react authentically to a myriad of actions, but their banter runs hollow, and any conversation that comes from the main character happens off the field and on their crappy legally distinct iPhone. Text messages from coaches, college buddies, or sponsors pop up each week, leading to a range of narrative decisions. However, the relationships made through text are paper thin for a party-based RPG like this. Persona, this is not. Your best friend since freshman year of college will not remember this. Friends will ask if you want to go out to a college party instead of study, which can either negatively affect popularity or GPA scores. Dialogue choices don't impact the relationships you have with those characters at all, but instead impact the management gameplay done outside of battles. Players decide what to do before a battle by navigating copious amounts of menus to spend a limited amount of energy points between 5 activities that each affect specific players' stats. Academics prepare the player for their final exams by raising GPA scores. Leadership improves the coach's trust in you, which grants more attack options during gameplay. Health monitors the player's risk of injury, which increases after each battle fought or practice completed. Training is the fastest way to gain experience points, but also rapidly depletes health. And lastly, brand raises the player's popularity, which attracts more sponsors with better NIL deals. For a limited time only. NIL deals will deliver character perks at the low cost of a couple energy points. This management sim makes college life simplistic and impersonal, but it's also just enough of an entertaining balancing act to break up the action. It's important to properly balance each activity throughout the week because neglecting any one for too long could lead to unforeseen consequences in the heat of battle. College Football 25's greatest storytelling accolades happen during the toughest battles. This RPG's unique spin on turn-based combat pits 2 schools against each other to take turns dealing the most damage before the timer runs out. Time is the ultimate factor in College Football 25. It can either be the party's greatest ally or worst enemy. The rules are pretty simple. The 11-man party is given about 40 seconds to pick their attack and start their turn, or else they will be penalized. If the attack is completed inside the battlefield, then the battle time will keep ticking and the 40-second attack clock resets. However, if the attack is incomplete or goes beyond the battlefield for any reason, then the attack clock is reset, but the battle time freezes until the next attack begins. Both parties have 3 timeouts as well, which will immediately stop the timer no matter what until the next turn. See? Simple. This gives both schools multiple ways to manipulate said timer, which can benefit them massively depending on the amount of damage they've done to their enemy. Manipulating time is just as important as any powerful attack because it grants the party more attacks to do, or can limit the amount of enemy attacks possible when they haven't done enough damage yet to win. This creates a fascinating tug of war within the turn-based combat system, leading to tons of surprises. With the right amount of attacks strategically angled out of bounds, 2 minutes can last a lifetime. Conversely, making sure every significant attack finishes inbounds can tank the timer for the enemy, leaving them with less time to execute an attack devastating enough to turn the tide. In college football, wasting time is a legitimate strategy. You hear that, Mom? This battle over Pink Floyd's Time makes almost every fight crescendo nicely into a tense and desperate struggle. With topsy-turvy combat this well designed, College Football 25 becomes an emotional game, especially with its most controversial choice. Players are only in control of their main character, not any other party members, at least in the career mode. This double-edged sword is surprising to see today after classic RPGs like Persona 3 learned the hard way and changed this decision for future remakes. Non-controllable party members build gameplay that is based on trust, and I have plenty of trust issues. As the quarterback, I dictate where my projectiles go, but once the ball is out of my hand, it is up to the wide receivers to catch the ball and take it to the enemy's weak point for massive damage. Same goes for physical attacks, which can only be done by running backs I also can't control. Even the attacks themselves are chosen by the coach, not me. The only way to change that is to upgrade the leadership skills to force the coach to deliver more options. While the quarterback is the leader of the battle, like any general, there is only so much they can control before they have to rely on their soldiers to get the job done. Needing to believe in my fellow party members during critical moments in battle made me closer to these guys than any text messages they could possibly send. It also got me more frustrated with these characters than any bit of writing could ever do. Trusting in your fellow man never helped me out in real life, and it sure as hell doesn't help me out here with AI this inconsistent. I could throw the ball in the absolute perfect position, right on target, but then the wide receiver lets it slip through his fingers. I can watch my running back have a clear opening to run right past all the enemies, but instead I watch him run straight into them. As the quarterback, I only take part in offensive turns, never defensive turns. So I could score massive damage on our enemies, just for the automated defense to fumble the bag and negate all the damage I did. Since losing is still progress, the game isn't afraid to get difficult, and I appreciate that. But College Football 25 is not the Dark Souls of football games. Where every death in Dark Souls feels like it was my fault, most deaths in College Football 25 feel out of my hands, literally. But obviously, any victories are all me, cause I'm just that good. Our party had a new pep in our step thanks to my arrival freshman year, and a massive winning streak sophomore year broke us into the top 25 schools. Sadly, the winds blew south near the end and we couldn't land ourselves a spot in the playoffs yet again. Did I mention College Football 25 is an emotional game? Junior year rolled around, and if we wanted to make the playoffs, it was time to get mean. Combat is loaded with frustrating RNG-like elements that tarnish how much fun the gameplay can get. However, these dramatically low lows make the highs that much higher. Marching across the battlefield to score a touchdown, which is their version of an execution attack, is insanely satisfying because the player finally witnesses everything go according to plan. While the game is turn-based, each attack demands button prompts akin to Paper Mario that require precise timing and awareness of character animations to provide the most damage. They aren't always the most reliable, but when it works, it's the perfect level of tactile feel that elevates the turn-based combat. Repetition creeps in when dominating low-level schools since gameplay never truly evolves beyond where it begins. And lackluster enemy variety doesn't help the combat get any less stale. Despite all that, the pulse-pounding excitement rushes back in when up against over-leveled schools. We fought even tougher foes throughout junior year and barely earned our spot as the number 8 school. You can physically feel the difference between college skill level whenever enemies constrict your party across the battlefield and really push the player to think fast and act with precision. A strong defensive team can add cold debuffs to the opponent's offense after repeatedly stopping their advances. But all it takes is a few well-executed attacks to flip the script and buff the offense's stats during a hot streak. The game does a fantastic job at reactively implementing statistical changes during battle that are mechanically deep but easy to understand. All of these challenging intricacies get exacerbated whenever the battle is being fought on the enemy's turf. There is always a crowd of fans surrounding the fight based on where the battle is being held, giving the defending team an advantage. When battling a dominant school at their own home, the crowd is just as much an enemy as the school itself. Their chants interfere with the party's composure, not only deteriorating their stats, but also playing mischievous Kojima-esque tricks within the UI to make the fight legitimately harder. Necessary button prompts will now be hidden. Party members will have trouble hearing the quarterback, and attacks will appear differently on the battlefield in an attempt to cause confusion. It astonishingly works to trip up the player and rip them out of their comfort zone. When all these trusty mechanics turn against you, these top schools feel like true boss battles. Fighting these colorful bosses across the nation is where the subtle world building takes shape. Every battle comes packaged with an interlude briefly showcasing the unique rituals each school has that implies deep history within their institution and what they represent. The world of college football is just as hard-hitting as the action in the arena, and EA Sports does a wonderful job subtly revealing this to add texture to the gameplay. That atmosphere is electric, and the gameplay is what carries players through their own unique story of glory. Being top 8 was enough to grant us an invitation to the coveted playoffs. As the illustrious Paul Rudd once said, "Look at us. If we lost now, our year was over, and our first opponent was no joke." They kicked, they screamed, they twisted and shouted, but we pulled out the victory from the jaws of defeat and moved on to our next battle against Georgia. Now, if this was still freshman year, I would be afraid. But over the years, I watched our team blossom from a ragtag group of misfits to an inseparable brotherhood of loyalty. Georgia may have the better stats, and the crazier fan base, and the devilish good looks, but our team, we have the heart. They killed us. With Georgia bringing our junior year to an abrupt end, senior year began with a whole new energy behind it. The momentum was gone. A time jump took place unlike anything ever seen in a classic RPG before. Many of my brothers had left to chase their pro league dreams. We lost so many good men out there. My youth was long behind me. I became an old man, wiser, yet weaker than ever before. Georgia rattled my bones and left me with a shell-shocked passing game. More counterattacks slipped through the cracks. My star running back was gone, and now some new running back took his place. He carried with him a spry energy, reminiscent of my freshman salad days. It annoyed me, but his skills gave me the safety net I needed when I was too afraid to risk a projectile attack, and he taught me how to believe in my pass game again. Thanks to him, we made it back to the playoff tournament, and this time, we were going to win it for the boys back home. Our first game was a massive win, but we saw Georgia across the bracket taunting us before their first playoff game against Georgia Tech. Winner plays us in the next round. Another rematch with Georgia was certainly imminent. Georgia humiliated us time and time again, and senior year meant this was my last chance to bring home this trophy. Georgia was not going to stop me, stop us. We marched into the next round anticipating the highest stakes battle of our entire career. UMass versus Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech. Yeah, they beat Georgia pretty easily, actually. Well, that plotline went nowhere. But that is the beauty of a dynamic story. Just like real life, sometimes it doesn't matter. Luckily for us, Georgia Tech was ranked much lower than Georgia, so this round was even easier than the last. We finally made it to the championship battle. It was the moment I've been waiting for 4 whole years. About 20 hours in the game, but still. And you know what? We lost. It was heartbreaking. It was bitter without the sweet. It was just like Rocky. But nobody likes to lose, and everybody loves Rocky 4 more than the first. So I used the oldest trick in the RPG book. Oh, I saved scum, buddy. And when I reloaded the game, I won the trophy fair and square. It was triumphant. It was everything I ever wanted for the past 20 hours. It was the end. Wait, that's it? After winning, you watch the fancy cutscene where you hold the trophy and then move right back into the menus to either retire or go to the big leagues. For real this time. It may be one of the most anticlimactic endings to a traditional turn-based RPG I've ever seen. You don't even get to kill God. Choosing to retire sends you straight back to the main menu, while choosing to go to the NFL draft asks you to transfer your save for the sequel, Madden NFL 25. Man, these JRPG titles are so confusing.